And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Ryan Tackeray, the Digital Services Librarian, and we are here for another edition of What Are You Reading? I hope you can't hear that noise in the background. Our roof is being worked on here at the library, and it was silent for like the last 20 minutes. As we go live, it just started up again. We're here with Sherry from the Genesee Johnson branch and Chris from the Fenton branch. And we are also here of the new face today, Heather, our new youth services librarian that just started with us. And I am excited to have her here with us for the What Are You Reading? So we do this once a month and we talk about different books we've read recently and what we thought about them. They do most of the talking. I don't. So these librarians do most of it. And what we thought about it. And we encourage you, if you're watching at home, to go ahead and let us know what you've been reading. Leave us a comment or a question, whether you're watching this on our website or our Facebook page. And we'll just go ahead and get started. I think we had a theme, which was a school theme, right, for September?
Mm-hmm.
We kind of pulled Heather in here at the last minute, so I don't think she'll have like a school theme book, but I think her books will be excellent and perfect for this as well. So let's go ahead and get started. And Sherry, do you want to take the lead and talk about our first book here?
Sure. So I'll start with our theme. It was back to school. Mine is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. It's young adult. It's been on my TBR shelf for a while. I was looking for something to read and finally decided to pick it up. And I'm really, really super glad I did. It took me about a month to get through because it's long. It's 500 pages. The world building is really intricate, and there's some gaps in my knowledge of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, which this book is based on, so I kept having to stop and look things up. But once you get used to the world building, and if you have a little more knowledge of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, this is an excellent book. So Bree's attending the early college program at the University of North Carolina while she's still struggling with her grief over her mother's death in a car accident. She accidentally stumbles upon two students killing demons, which they call Isles, just off campus, and it brings back memories of a suspicious presence at the hospital when her mom died. So this leads her to the Legendborn, who are descendants of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and they vanquish demons or Isles to protect humankind. They're connected to her mother and Bree in ways you'll never expect. And she decides to kind of infiltrate their ranks with the help of the descendant of Arthur, Nick, who's kind of on the outs with the order. So she decides she's going to get involved with them and see what they might have had to do with her mother's death. What she discovers is bigger than the Legendborn, and as she's still struggling with her grief, she must come to terms with revelations about her mom and her family, in particular, her grandmother and those descendants. This is the beginning of a series. I'm not sure if it's a trilogy. The second book comes out in November. There's just so much to love about this book. The diversity, the banter, Bree's super sarcastic. The fight scenes are really good, and the way it confronts what it means to be a Black woman today. So this book talks a lot about the ways that young Black women survive, resist, and thrive. The author actually drew on her own experiences. She went to the University of North Carolina, so most of the places are real. There actually is a secret society at the University of North Carolina based on the Knights of the Round Table. I'm sure they don't fight demons, but it's kind of interesting that she tied that in. So I think if you liked Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo or A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney, you should enjoy this one. It's won a ton of awards too, and it's just so good.
It's a young adult novel. Is it more of a junior fiction or a teen fiction, or where?
It's definitely teen. She's probably about 16 or 17 when it starts.
Okay. And how do you know there is a secret society in the University of North Carolina? Are you a part of it, Sherry? That's what
I
I
am
want to know.
not, but I was looking up some places in the book. It's just like a nerdy thing that I do, and it happened to pop up. There wasn't a ton of information because obviously it's secret, but there was enough to be like, oh, this is what she must have based this on.
That's really interesting. All right, thank you, Sherry. Chris, what do you want to talk about first?
Um, I guess I'll talk about I kind of want to go in order here because I
Okay.
didn't realize I did this, but I kind of go from summer leading into fall. So I'm going to talk about my school book second.
Okay.
The first book
Sounds
I'm going
good.
to talk about is The Summer Friend. It's a memoir by Charles McGrath. He is a former editor of the New York Times Book Review. So his writing is really exquisite. Um, I read this book in like a day and a half. I really didn't think that I would read it that quickly, but I just couldn't put it down. I wanted to have that summer reminiscent feeling, and this book delivers that. So it's a very descriptive look at memories of summers past, written from a baby boomer. So keep that in mind as you're reading it. If you're from a different age group and generation. I don't think it took away from the story, but I do think it is a different perspective that someone like from my generation would have about summers. I enjoyed it nonetheless. So each chapter has a theme, and he frequently discusses his friendship with the other Chip. So his name is Charles. He goes by Chip. He met at his summer home another man named Chip. So it's not really a book about friendship, though. It's more about how we have fond memories of summer and our youth. And Chip was just a major part of each of those summers for Chip. So I call it an ode to summer because it really reads that way. Um, there were a few chapters that were more technical, like about sailing and golfing, and I didn't really enjoy those chapters as much because it was more than I really wanted to know about sailing and, for that matter, golf. um, but overall, it was a quick read, and I really enjoyed the visuals because, like I said, he's very descriptive. Um, the way he reminisces about summer just kind of takes you back to like other memories that like I had of summer when I was younger. Um, it include all the fun activities of like bonfires and going fishing and going swimming and cooking out on the patio and just anything and everything you can possibly think about as summer. So summer, I would say, is a character in this book. It's only 240 pages, so it's pretty short. I came upon it because a patron had returned it, and I'd asked her, I said, "Oh, hey, did you read this? What did you think?" And she said, "No, I just had so many other things. I didn't have a chance to read it." So I thought, well, I'll take it. I'm going on vacation in a few weeks. I'll read it on vacation. Well, it turned out that I didn't read it on vacation. I read it in a day and a half, and I really liked it. So the patron who I had seen it originally from, she was in yesterday. And so I told her, I said, "Hey, I read this book. I really liked it. Maybe you should give it another try." And so she took it back out. And I'm anxious to hear what she's going to say about it when she brings it back.
That's really interesting. Is that patron? Is it someone who sort of doesn't like memoirs? Is that maybe was that her issue, or was it?
No, she just said that she had had too many books checked out at
Yeah.
once.
Oh,
So,
well, I think we can all relate to that. I,
right.
I like the idea of you mentioned like kind of like unlocking other memories or reminding you of memories that you've had, because it sounds like a book that, yeah, it kind of really makes you think about a lot of stuff, right? Like a lot of, I don't know. I wonder how much of your own memories paralleling what's in the book affects how powerful of a book it is for you, right?
Right. And that's a really good question. Because at first, I really thought it was going to be about friendship. And if you read some of the reviews, it talks about the friendship and this and that. And I guess maybe my only experience of reading a friendship book is about female friendship. So maybe if a man was reading this and they would be like, oh yeah, that's just like how men's friendship is. I don't really know.
Right. It seems like a book that really you could pull a lot of different things out depending on whatever you are kind of bringing to it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That sounds really interesting. All right. Thank you for sharing. And Heather, what is the first book you want to talk about here on What Are You Reading?
I'd like to start with The Mysterious Benedict Society, if you've got that. Awesome. So with this new position, new job that I'm in the youth services librarian here, I have almost an hour commute both ways from my home in Livingston County. So I am using that time by listening to audiobooks. And the first series of books that I decided to indulge in on my way to work and after work, home again, is The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. This is an older book, and it is a series of books. So I'm on the second one now, but it's truly a wonderful book series aimed at elementary through middle school students. So if you have children in your home who love the Harry Potter series or the Percy Jackson series, this might skew a little younger, but it's wonderful in the way that there's a group of 4 children who are exceptional, of course, as all children are. And they must band together to fight an evil force in the world. And one thing that I love about this is that each of these children have unusual skills or talents, and they're all very different. And there isn't a star. A lot of series often have the star, like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. But in this series, each child plays an important role. And I love the fact that they must work together, and that sometimes the most unlikely child is the one to actually save the day. This is a great series for people who are fans of Roald Dahl or, of course, Harry Potter. These are long reads. I think the first book, I listened to it on audio. I think the first book was 12 to 13 hours long. So it's great for a read along with your child before bed or perhaps a car trip. I'm really enjoying it in the car. I'm literally laughing out loud at certain points of this book. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this book is the importance of teamwork, the importance of understanding that everyone has something to offer, and everyone has skills and talents, and that if we work together, we can create pretty amazing accomplishments.
Oh, what age range do you think this is kind of written for?
I would say that it's probably the protagonists are 11. So I would say it's around that age range, but obviously precocious children who are reading higher than their age level at 8 or 9 would be perfectly comfortable with it. There are some big words in it, but oftentimes those words are defined in the book. If your child likes puzzles, crosswords, strategy games of any sort, I think they'll really enjoy this series.
I think it's interesting that you are listening to it as well as you mentioned, doing a read along with kids. And so you're kind of a child being read the stories. That's kind of the same way you're taking it in too, which I think is interesting. Does that sort of change when you listen to a book versus reading a book? Does that sort of change for you? Does it, I guess, change the experience for you at all?
um, you know, there's something about listening. I mean, I've listened to some audiobooks that put me right to sleep. This series is not putting me to sleep at all. I enjoy the narrator, obviously an older gentleman. He's doing a wonderful job. And yeah, and I'm imagining reading the book to, a child who maybe can't handle, a really thick book. So maybe you spend half an hour before bed reading a chapter or something like that. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the audio version of it, which isn't to say that I actually probably would get even more out of it if I sat down and read it myself, because there are times when I'm driving that I'm just like, oh, there's an accident up ahead, let me slow down, and I'm not totally paying attention to every sentence. Yes.
I like that about audiobooks. There's some books that I personally have struggled or couldn't get into as like a physical book, but as an audiobook, I was able to really, for whatever reason, in some audiobooks that like I just couldn't really do, but I was able to then, read and ingest better as reading it as a book. And so it's interesting to me always when people listen to audiobooks, I like to know what they listen to and how that experience is for them. There's certain things like I think of like I don't know, really complicated like fiction books. I always have a hard time listening, but I like nonfiction and things. I sort of prefer the audiobook version of. But it kind of changes the experience, and that's always interesting to me. Cool. All right. Well, that is our first round. We will go back to Sherry. Sherry, what do you want to talk about first or second, I suppose?
Don't Look for Me by Wendy Walker. It's a thriller, and I came across this book on Instagram, and I was in the mood for a thriller, so I downloaded it from Libby. So it is on Libby. So Molly Clark's heading home on a stormy night when her car runs out of gas, and she disappears after a man and a young child pick her up. When the police start to look into her disappearance, they find that her credit card has charged a night's stay at a casino hotel, and left behind is a note that says, "Don't look for me." So Molly has some good reasons to disappear. She'd accidentally caused the death of her young daughter years before, and so her relationships with her remaining family members, her husband, an adult daughter, and a teenage son, are difficult to say the least. So Nicole, her daughter, doesn't believe her mom would abandon her family. So she heads to the small town in Connecticut where her mother's car was found and begins to search for her. With the help of a local police officer, she digs up the town's and her family's secrets, and that includes a young woman who went missing years before. And they're wondering if Molly's disappearance could be connected to this young woman who disappeared years before. You get a dual timeline with Nicole's story and then Molly's story. So you get Nicole looking for her mom, and then what's actually happened to Molly throughout the time that Nicole's looking for her. There's a lot of twists and turns, a lot of red herrings. Just when you think you've got it figured out, and you eventually will figure it out, then there's a twist that you didn't see coming, which turns everything upside down again. This book sucked me in, and it made it really hard to put down. I'd never read anything by the author before, but I'm definitely going to pick up another book by her when I'm in the mood for a thriller. If you liked Lisa Jewell, I think you'll like this one. It was just very twisty, a lot going on, a lot of characters who aren't necessarily the most likable. But again, then there's lots of twists and turns, and what you thought was happening is actually not what's happening. It's just a really good, quick thriller if you're in the mood for a thriller.
That's really interesting. I like you talked about the two different timelines going on at the same time. Do they do it? I must do a good job then of like kind of hiding the mystery while still showing the two different timelines.
Yeah, which is I think probably hard to do as an author.
Yeah, I would think so. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Sherry. And Chris, what do you want to talk about next?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about, as we fade away from summer and head into school, my school selection was Don't Know Tough by Eli Cranner. It's not really a school story. It's more of a football story. Well, it's based around football. Let me put it that way. And it is also the selection for our Fenton Fiction Book Club that we're going to discuss tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So I'll be anxious to hear what my book club has to say about it. And in that vein, I'm going to let you know what I thought about it first, and then I'll tell you what it's about. So I was hoping it was going to be more of a football story. As I read, Beartown, and it was a hockey story, I kind of thought it would be along those lines. It isn't really, and it's not really a school story, even though some of the characters are high school students, and some scenes do take place in the school and on the football field. But the story is actually what I call an expose of socioeconomic dynamics in the South. And that nails it right on the head. It's gritty, it's brutal, it's raw. It reminded me of Jesmyn Ward's Savage the Bones. So if you read that, you probably will like this story as well. It has what I think of as hard to take realism, yet I couldn't stop reading it. So it is the story of Billy Lowe, who is a high school senior and plays running back for the Denton football team. I think it's Denton. He comes from a rough neighborhood and an even rougher family. He has anger issues that often lead to acts of violence and any kind of act of violence that you can think of. He's pretty much raised in an environment that allowed that, promoted that. I'm not sure what the best word is to describe it, but the other main character is his football coach, who is a born-again Christian who also has a very troubled background. And the coach sees it as his duty to kind of save Billy, which sets up this whole mess of bad decisions. I think the author does a really good job developing the main characters, because there's a whole slew of several side characters as well. And the side characters really add to the story. So yeah, without giving out a whole lot of detail about what's going to happen in the story, just be prepared for a really tough read.
Yeah, it sounds very opposite of the Summer Friend. Right, is more. I was gonna say, could almost have to go be a great beach read for a theme for last year, right?
Yeah,
Or
right.
last month, not last year. Was there anything that was really, I guess, what was the most surprising thing about the book? Was there anything that you learned or about the people who live here, or anything that you kind of took away that kind of shocked you the most?
I guess it didn't really shock me because I had read the Savage the Bones, and it was that kind of just hard life, poor community. I mean, it was a little bit rough. I read Don't Know Tough before I read The Summer Friend, and so maybe that's why I just devoured The Summer Friend, because it was so much lighter.
Sure.
In its vision,
Right. I think this fits in with, like, I don't know, a lot of the books that you've talked about, that we've always talked about before, that a lot of us who do What Are You Reading are kind of drawn to, that are sort of maybe uncomfortable reads, or like tough reads where maybe not always the happiest.
Right.
But
And I come from, my son is a major football fan, and we are huge football, we watch lots of football Thursday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday night. Football's always on. So that's where I had, like, when I selected this book, I was like, oh, awesome. It's going to be a football story. But it really didn't talk a whole lot about football, other than, I guess, that, that whole, you got to be tough to play football. So that kind of, don't know tough is how it kind of all comes together.
Right.
But
All right. Thank you. And we'll go back to Heather now. Heather, what book do you want to talk about next? And is it going to be as tough as what we just talked about?
Oh, definitely not. No. How about we go to Rot, the cutest in the world? Oh, sorry, one. There we go. The cutest in the world, Rot. So another joyful part of my job is discovering picture books that I didn't know anything about, and this is one of them. This is Rot. He is a mutant potato, and he encounters a sign for a contest of the cutest in the world. Rot finds himself up against a little tiny kitty and a cute and fuzzy bunny and a little pink jellyfish. So he's thinking he might not win this contest. It's a really wonderful book about embracing who you are, no matter appearances, and also kind of it explores the sense that or the idea that contests are kind of like lotteries, and a lot of it depends on the judges. So I won't give it away, but it's really adorable. I was laughing out loud the entire time. So the pictures, the illustrations, Ben Clanton wrote the book and did the illustrations, and they're really wonderful. There is another book out now called, I think, Rot, the Bravest in the World, and I have not yet read that, but I'm looking forward to reading that as well.
It looks adorable. I love it. I can never get enough picture book recommendations, so I'll take a look at it. I want to mention two that someone had commented. Charmin said that they also commute for an hour and recently checked out the audiobook of The Many Daughters of Afong Moy. That the book is really interesting. And so there's another recommendation from one of our patrons. If you're out there watching and have other recommendations for audiobooks or non-audiobooks, please feel free to let us know what you've been enjoying. But with that, let's go back to Sherry. Sherry, what is your last book for today?
The last book I have is The Book Eaters by, I believe her name's Sunyi Dean. It's a fairly new book, maybe a month or two old. It's hard to describe. It's dark fantasy that kind of borders on horror, if that makes any sense. So basically the book is about, in different parts of England lies a secret society, a line of supernatural-ish beings known as book eaters. They consume books as food, and when they do, they retain all the book's content and knowledge. So book eaters are becoming rare. So daughters are raised on a strict diet of fairy tales, and they can expect a life of marriage contracts and childbearing. Their daughters are expected to marry twice and bear 2 children to keep these lines of book eaters going. And there's book eaters in different parts of England. So Devon Fairweather is the main character and is a book eater, and she's grown up curious about the world. She eats some things she's not supposed to. She doesn't stick to the strict diet of fairy tales. She's a little bit of a troublemaker, but she's still expected to do the same things that other book eaters do. So after her first marriage and the seizure of her first child, which the children stay with the fathers, and then the mothers go on to their next marriage and child, and then they go back home and they live as kind of like these aunts helping to raise other women's children. So after the seizure of her first child, she realizes she doesn't want this to happen again. She didn't want to leave her first child. She's definitely not going to leave a second one. So she flees with her second child and attempts to live among humans while trying to save her son. There's something a little different about her son, and I don't want to give it away because it's a big part of the story, and they don't reveal it until partway through the book. So I don't want to reveal that part. But her son is a little different from the other book eaters. So she's trying to outrun people looking for her while trying to save her son. Her family, including her brother, is pursuing her, and her child's family. They're bent on destroying the two of them. This book kind of gave me Handmaid's Tale vibes. So it wades deep into issues around motherhood and the status of women and girls, but it also talks about the question of what's considered a monster, and how we define monsters in society. It was really entertaining, really dark. I would say maybe besides the Handmaid's Tale vibes, maybe if you like Stephen King, this might be a good book for you because it is creepy, different, but definitely a good one to pick up since, we're going into the spooky season of October.
I sort of like the kind of a weird premise for a book where there's, the book eaters. It's a weird idea that I hadn't heard before, and that's really neat. I think it allows for a lot of possible, interesting possibilities. Also, I like how there was a secret society in there, which I feel like is the hidden theme running through all your recommendations this month. Do you have if you could eat and devour a book and learn everything in it, memorize it, what book would you eat, Sherry?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess it would be nice to retain all that knowledge and you'd never have to look anything up.
Yeah, you could just eat an encyclopedia or something.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. All right, Crystal, what is your last book today?
Okay, so on the spooky theme, and as I transition from summer into school into fall, my last book is a picture book also, and it's called The Little Ghost Who Was a Quilt. It was written by Ryle Nason and illustrated by Byron Eggenschweiler. So it's a picture book just in time for Halloween. It grabbed my attention when I was straightening the shelves the other day because of the muted colors. I really loved the black and white with the little pop of blue on the ghost. It's the story of a little ghost who isn't a sheet. He isn't a sheet ghost, but he's a quilt ghost, and he's unlike anybody in his family. They're all sheet ghosts. This entire neighborhood, they're all sheet ghosts, and he feels very different. So, for one, he's heavier than the others, so it makes it really difficult for him to fly and sneak up on people. He's always hot. So this time of year, you don't always want to be hot underneath the big heavy quilt. And he's very sad that he isn't like the others. He feels left out. He feels picked on. But on Halloween, he discovers his true gift, and he helps out a little girl. And then that's when he realizes it's okay to be different. And I just really liked the story because it was, the illustrations were sweet, and it was a good way to bring out, how kids feel different, whether their hair is a different color or because they wear hand-me-downs or whatever the things are. This was a good way to make other kids see that, it's okay to be different.
I had to bring up some of the art from inside. So I think I have two people here who can help me out. I'll tell a little story. When I was putting the art together for this program earlier today, I got the cover of that book. I looked at it, and it kind of like what you're talking about with the summer friend. It kind of unlocked a memory in my mind. And I remember reading this as a kid. It reminded me of a book I read as a kid. But then I looked it up, and it wasn't published until 2020. So it obviously wasn't this book. And now I don't know what this book I read as a kid was. So if anyone has any ideas of books that look like this, please let me know, because now I'm trying to figure out what it was I'm thinking of. But I love the art in this so much. It looks really nice.
Yeah. So do you think the book that you read was published when you were a kid, or do you think it was older?
When I was a kid, yes.
Okay.
It's reminding me of something, and I have to figure out what this is now. What this book I read as a child was. So if you think of anything, let me know. If anyone at home has any ideas, go check out this book and read it, so that way that can help inform you, and then let me know what you think the book I read as a child was. Help me find this book.
Perfect.
All right, Heather. What is the last book for today?
Called I Am Wolf by Kelly Lee Miller. Yes. So I'm just really indulging in my fandom of picture books. And this is a wonderful book for anyone who has had a rescue pet, rescued a pet from the Humane Society or another rescue organization. Wolf is a ferocious little beast who gets picked up and taken to the animal shelter. And he or she, I'm not sure which, has a lot of spunk, and he's quite ferocious, but he has a lot to learn as well. It really, really was a fun book to read. I have a rescue dog who reminds me a little bit of Wolf. And so it definitely helped me to understand some of the challenges that they bring sometimes.
I was trying to bring up some art, but I'm not fast enough.
That's all right.
But the drawings look really great. Like, it looks really good. If you take a look inside the book, it looks really good. Wait, you had this one with you, didn't you?
Yeah.
Do you want to show some pages?
Some of them. Yeah, let's see. So yeah,
Cute.
Wolf starts out kind of like this, and ends up here. Yeah, and then I love this one. I am not sweet. Yeah, and then he gets a little love and attention from the folks at the shelter. And eventually he finds the one.
Looks really great. All right. Excellent. So those are all of our books we have today. Any before we go, any closing comments from anyone here? We'll have to decide upon a theme for next month. We'll figure that out after this program ends. If you have any theme recommendations for us at home, you can let us know, though. Send us those. Leave this in the comment. Before I actually get back to the panel here, I want to say one thing is Norman here left a comment and said a book that they would devour would be the dictionary, which I think is also a good option. So anything that anyone here would like to say before we go?
I was thinking about that devour comment, and I was thinking maybe a cookbook, because as I'm eating it, I'm also eating this, like, hopefully amazing food. Right?
That would
There
work.
you go. That, yeah. Do you ingest like the tastes of what you're eating? I don't know. That's a good question.
And then all those recipes are in my head, and I just will have them all the time.
You never have to consult the cookbook, and
Right.
maybe you would never have to like figure out what to make for dinner. You just have a good idea; it would just come to you.
Yeah.
The perfect thing to make.
You
All
would go
right.
to the grocery store and you'd know what to buy. You wouldn't
Yeah,
have to
right. Yeah, you don't have to.
No list.
Exactly. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching from home and your comments. And thank you, all three of you, for being here with me. And we will be back next month in October for our October edition. And so until then, we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.